You know, for even before when Johnson was in trouble and we talked about who his potential replacement would be, every single time we said it would come down to two people, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. And this Tory leadership race, it came down to exactly that. And in that event, if you may remember, we always said Liz Truss would win. Why did we say Liz Truss would always win? Because Liz Truss is somehow, miraculously, it's kind of bizarre how she's managed to do it, but somehow she's done it. She's incredibly popular with the Tory base. Why has she done it? Well, first of all, she's engaged in constant populism. She has said and has a history of basically saying whatever just happens to be the popular thought at the time. She is constantly on her sort of social media, putting out a very constant sort of social media presence for herself. You know, no other conservative is out there doing that. So she's incredibly popular with the base, and she will win. It's not even close. This is going to be a steamroller race. We're already seeing polls, predicted polls by people, of Sunak getting like 34 and Truss getting like 66% of the vote. It's over, really. Sunak's already lost, and I've always said, you know, with less than 2 weeks to go now, I've always said, you know, 90% chance she wins, with that 10% just for, you know, you don't know what might happen type of thing. But with 2 weeks less to go now, yeah, I think Truss has won. Truss has won this contest, no shadow of a doubt. I don't even think this is going to be a close race. It's just going to be, to be honest, embarrassing for Sunak when these results get read out. I think he's going to get absolutely steamrolled, and unfortunately, we get Prime Minister Liz Truss, and we're going to talk today about something we mentioned one of the past videos, of something called Trussonomics, because Liz Truss is engaging in constantly throughout all this leadership contest in basic, straight up fancy economics that don't make sense, and in many cases will worsen our current situation. So before we go diving into that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, well, buy me a coffee. But there's also the YouTube thank you button down below as well. And there's also the Pony Club as well. So let's go over today to the Byline Times with their interview. They asked a top economist what would happen with Truss's plans. And to be honest, it's not looking good. And everything she's saying she wants to do could make things infinitely worse. So I always said it, Truss would be worse than Johnson, but she would be worse in so many other different ways as well compared to Johnson. So let's go over to, again, as we said, coming from the Byline Times, the title of Trussonomics Will Worsen Inflation and the Cost of Living Inequities. Liz Truss, the forerunner to be the UK's next Prime Minister, I think she already is at the moment, to be honest, recently told The Spectator that a programme of tax cuts and defence spending pledges estimated to have cost as much as £50 billion would be paid by accumulating a debt to be written off over a longer period, like a war debt. But experts have warned that if Truss wins the keys to number 10, she will be unable to simply borrow to fund her proposals in the way that she has suggested. Instead, leading economists believe that the only way that she can finance her promises will be through cutting public spending at a time when public services, already crippled by years of austerity, are desperate for cash injections. And according to a former government economist, Jonathan Portes, Truss may be able to borrow to balance the books in the short term, but over the longer term, the proposed tax cuts mean less money for the already underfinanced public services at a period where the demographic pressures means we need to spend more money, particularly on our health and social care, he told the Byline Times. One area of public services that cannot afford any further cuts is the health service, which, according to the British Medical Association, has suffered historical underfunding and under-resourcing for over a decade. While the NHS funding increased during the pandemic, the annual increases to state spending on health fell to less than 1% under the coalition government before creeping up to just less than 2% in 2019, compared to 6% annual increase under New Labour. The impact of austerity is clear to patients struggling with record waiting lists, which have now hit 6.6 million. Scarce beds and excessive waiting times. Almost 100,000 patients with serious heart problems have waited more than 18 weeks to receive the potentially life-saving care. And as of May this year, increasing their risk of dying prematurely, while cancer treatment referrals have not been met since 2013-2014. But it is not just the health system that is in dire need of funding. With the number of public services barely intact, experts have raised concerns that they may not be remedied under Truss's plans. Long-term challenges are damaging growth in this country, levelling up lower-income children, falling further behind in school, and public services on the brink of collapse will go unanswered. Jonathan Sunday, an economist at King's College London, also told the Byline Times, and it is difficult to see where she will actually get the cash to address them after her massive tax cuts. For fewer than 48 hours last week, Truss pledged a war on waste in Whitehall to save over 8.8 billion a year, money that could be used to partly finance her tax cuts and spending pledges. But she was forced to dramatically abandon that policy after criticism that it would come as a result in people outside of London earning less. This dramatic U-turn makes further cuts to public services even more likely. And here's the thing. We've always said this when it comes to this. Whenever a politician says they're going to cut, waste in Whitehall, well, that means you're now going to take government money away from some form of government department. And that means that department might not have the money or the funds or the resources to be able to do things that it used to do. And that should be worrying people, especially during a time of austerity where we are already facing so much problems in this country. But you can just see already the massive problems that Truss's spending is going to create. And we have to somewhat hope maybe a chancellor fights back against her, like we had maybe under Rishi Sunak, looking at, oh, well, Boris wants to do all this, but actually we don't have the money, and doing that might cause a lot of problems further down the line. So while that, in a way, was a good thing, from what we've seen so far and the potential replacements of Truss, because let's put it this way, Sunak is not going in the cabinet. He's getting the boot, and being, sent back to the backbenchers. Whoever gets in, and some of the other crazy plans they've put out there, it could go from really bad to really worse. And Truss screwing up the economy this bad is going to have not only short-term ramifications, but we're talking long ramifications. We're already looking at going into a recession, and we're potentially going into this point of we are the only country going into a recession, which makes things even worse. So, yeah, big problems, big problems ahead. Truss's almost decade-long record in cabinet also suggests that as Prime Minister, she would cut public service budgets. As Environmental Secretary, Truss nominated the Department for Environmental and Food Rural Affairs to reach an early agreement to slash spending in November of 2015, one of only 4 departments to do so. Indeed, in her current position as Foreign Secretary, Truss caused confusion last year when she leaked an email suggesting to do a planned 10% staff cut despite her publicly denying any such plans. And like I say, it goes, goes further on into this, but yeah, none of these plans are going to be good. None of this is going to be good at all. And it is worrying the fact that Liz Truss is going to be Prime Minister. Like it or not, she's going to be Prime Minister. And that has been evident really now for the past 3 or 4 weeks. And even now, as you see the polls of how Tory people have voted and what their intention is, you're already looking at some of the polls with Sunak between like 35% and Truss in like 60 to 65%. She has walked this competition. And unfortunately, she is going to double down on some incredibly bad right-wing ideas and ideology, which, again, according to her and everyone who follows them, if we follow these ideas, then, we should all be, billionaires by Christmas, Rodney, as the fool, only fools and horses, comment says. But you look at every single economist out there, there isn't a single economist, but probably bar Patrick Minford, who is saying that these ideas of what she wants to do are in any way good, or at least going to be good for the country. And that should be incredibly concerning. Because I'll tell you now, if Truss goes in and wrecks the economy this badly, then it's pretty much game over for the Conservatives. It is already, to be honest, at this point. But if they destroy the economy in the next 2 years, which is very, very likely, it's game over for them. Like, they ain't winning the next contest. Even if Boris, if Truss gets replaced with Boris to sort of go into that general election, Boris can't salvage them that much. And most of this damage has been done on his watch. So, yeah, that's sort of the current trajectory. And that's the problems that we are going to be facing. And it is not looking good. It is not looking good at all. And unfortunately, as we said, Truss is going to be Prime Minister. And that is going to bring whole new sets of problems coming forward, because she's going to put even more right-wing free market nut jobs into key positions, and they're going to do a lot of damage. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, we'll see you all